an overview of a new core project in composite forming that involves Nottingham, University of Bath and the University of Cambridge. So as the title suggests, the aim is to provide process improvements and simulation design tools to enable composite designers to produce parts more efficiently and with greater confidence. And this project is exclusively looking at non-crimp fabrics, both biaxial and unidirectional materials. And this is being driven by our industrial partners from both the aerospace and the automotive sectors. And we're exclusively also looking at double diaphragm forming as a low-cost method for producing large-scale components with single-sided tooling. So there are 4 objectives for this work. The first is to further the fundamental science of fabric deformation for this family of non-crimp fabrics. The second is to look at developing more robust testing methodologies to be able to characterize these materials. The third is to develop practical simulation tools that can be readily adopted by our industrial partners so they can implement them to improve rate and robustness. And the fourth is to develop practical process changes, again, that can be easily implemented at an industrial level for both double diaphragm forming and non-crimp fabrics. So this slide shows how the 3 partners are integrating and working together. So the University of Bath will be looking at developing an analytical model for ply layup to establish a compatibility index for the selected layup based purely on the angles between plies to indicate wrinkles. And this is based on existing work at Bath for UD prepreg, which will be extended to look at unidirectional and biaxial NCFs using this eigenvalue energy minimization approach. The work at Cambridge is looking at developing a component geometry designer. Again, this is a tool that will hopefully be adopted by designers to bring them closer to the manufacturing space so that they can ensure that designs are produced so that they're fit for manufacture. And this is based on a machine learning approach using the output from finite element simulations. So this is a multi-parameter remodeling tool that relies on machine learning to train an algorithm to detect the location of defects to facilitate the rapid redesign of tooling where required. And then the third element of the project is at Nottingham looking at more detailed finite element analysis for defect prediction. And the objective here really is to focus on large structures, sort of 10 meters plus, so that we're able to detect small scale defects in the order of millimeters over that large length scale. So we're working with a group of industrial partners, so Dassault System, Hexcel Fabrics, Reinforcements in Leicester, GKN Aerospace and Gordon Murray Design. And the aim is to provide a range of process developments to improve the robustness of the double diaphragm forming process, whilst looking at locally tailoring fiber architectures to achieve a step change in formability. So if we have a look at, first of all, at the component geometry designer, this is the ongoing work at Cambridge, and this builds upon a feasibility study that was funded by the Hub at Cambridge around 18 months ago. And that work was concerned with developing methods for evaluating wrinkles within preforms. And Michael and the group at Cambridge developed a digital image correlation approach for measuring the amplitude of wrinkles, and they produced a nice forming rig towards developing a forming limit diagram for these materials. So the idea is now that we use this convolutional neural network as a means of applying machine learning to try and understand why defects occur as a result of features within the tool geometry. So on the left-hand side, you'll see this geometry generation algorithm, which is based on a series of polygons. And Werner, the PhD student, has developed this so that we can generate quite a diverse range of geometries that can be evaluated using the sort of simplified finite element approach that we've been working on at Nottingham, and other codes that are available within the community. So Each one of these geometries will be evaluated for wrinkle patterns, looking at possibly the strain distribution in the fabric and looking at overshearing and wrinkles that occur, and then they will be analyzed using an image analysis technique, and that information will be then fed into this deep learning model. And the idea is that that deep learning model will then be applied to a number of unseen geometries to try and predict the wrinkling patterns, and this can then be validated using the double diaphragm forming facility at the University of Nottingham. Moving on to look at the more detailed FVA analysis, this is building upon work at Nottingham. So some years ago, we had a project looking at developing a simplified finite element model using a membrane approach. More recently, we've been trying to incorporate the bending effects of the fabric plies. So sorry about that. So what we're using is this composite layup module within Abacus, where we can define a single ply using this laminated approach. The yellow region you see on the left-hand side represents the in-plane stiffness of the material, and then the grey outer regions represent the bending behavior, and we can therefore decouple the in-plane and the out-of-plane responses to account for the different stiffnesses. And we've, in addition to developing the model, we've modified the existing method for characterizing the bending behavior of these fabrics so that we can capture the nonlinear behavior, and that's shown on the right hand side. You can see if we compare the two model outputs on the left with the experimental data on the right, the nonlinear bending behavior gives a much closer response to reality in terms of the wrinkle pattern. So what we want to be able to do is use this more sophisticated, detailed model to be able to predict the location of wrinkles, but it isn't really practical to do that over large length scales because of the computational resource required. So we've looked at using this global to local modeling approach, whereby we can model small regions in great detail, but initially we do this global model using the lower order membrane approach to identify where the critical regions are. So in the center here, you see these plots. The left-hand column is the response of the fabric showing areas of overshearing. The central column shows areas where the fibers are in compression along the fiber length, which will lead to buckling and out of plane wrinkling. And then the third column shows areas of fabric bridging where it hasn't conformed well to the tool. So when those three are superimposed, we get this defect plot on the right-hand side, and we can use that information then to identify these sub-regions where we can apply the more detailed model. And that's what we're showing here with these simulations. So across the bottom, this is the output from the structured white light scanner where we've done the experiment and then captured the wrinkle patterns in the lab. And the simulation is showing these sub-regions that have been formed. So what we've had to do is we've ran the global model using the membrane approach and then extracted appropriate boundary conditions for these sub-regions. And you can see there's very good agreement between the predicted wrinkle pattern and the experimental shape below. And to confirm this, we've actually done some experiments using the same size and shape piece of fabric as in the submodel to demonstrate the importance of the correct boundary conditions. And we get a very different response if we form obviously a small piece of fabric such as this, because we don't get the same draw-in that we would get from a much larger piece of fabric. So the idea is that we have this toolbox and we want to then apply these tools to make local and global process improvements. So Shuai Chen is working on this multi-objective optimization algorithm using genetic algorithms, and the idea is we can then intelligently modify the preform and the process to hopefully reduce or mitigate against these defects. So the things we're looking at are intraply stitch removal, You can see here the red regions indicate where the stitches have been removed, and this has a positive influence on the wrinkle patterns of these preforms. The idea is by using that genetic algorithm, we can then intelligently modify the stitch pattern to get a good balance between mechanical performance, formability, and handleability of the ply. Similarly, we've looked at local deposition of resin to try and change the local shear stiffness of the fabric, and this will then be driven also by that genetic algorithm. And the resin can also be used to locally bind plies together. And then finally, we've been looking at the influence of friction, interply friction, whereby looking at adding lubricants and other materials between the plies, we can influence the coefficient of friction, and this has a positive effect on the wrinkle behavior of the ply. So this seat mold here, for example, at the top, you can see there are quite severe wrinkles around the perimeter, but when the fabric has been lubricated, those wrinkles disappear. So thank you for listening.